Hey guys, my name is Matthew, and this video is 5 reasons why standalone books are better than book series. Here we go. Alright, big caveat to this video is I love book series. Some of my favorite books of all time come from book series, actually. And I do think that one of the beautiful things about a book series is when you've invested your time, your effort, your energy into a single book, you love the characters, you love the world, it's great that there can be a dozen more books after that, or however many are in the series. It's great to be able to continue investing into a world that you've already invested some in and you love. So book series are not all bad. Nowadays, when I'm looking for a new book to pick up and read, I find myself gravitating more and more towards standalone books. If there's a book series, I'm way less likely to grab it, and these are some of the reasons why. First of all, starting a new book series is a huge investment. If I read the first book and I love it, then I know that I'm going to have to read every other book in the series. I'm kind of a completionist, and so when I get invested, I want to see it through. A lot of times after you get to the third or the fourth book in the series, the idea is played out, but there's 4 more books in the series. And like I said, I'm a completionist, so I'm like, man, I got to see it through. I've already gotten through this much. With a standalone book, you just don't have that problem. You finish the book and you're done. The second reason that standalone books are better than book series is because every time I get into a really good book series, it seems like I'm waiting for the next one, and it's so annoying. Sometimes the reason I'm waiting is because they just don't have the next one at the library yet, or I don't want to spend the money on it, so I need to get it from the library or whatever, and that happens sometimes. But far more often, it's because the author hasn't finished writing the series yet, or the trilogy, or whatever it is, and it's really, really frustrating. This normally plays itself out in one of 2 ways. Either one, they were originally planning on writing a trilogy, let's say, so 3 books, and then they get halfway through and they realize that it's not going to work and they've got to do it in 4 books. So it's like the Inheritance trilogy, like the Aragon books. Christopher Paolini wrote the first 2 books. He said it was going to be a trilogy. Suddenly he realizes he has too much story. I'm waiting for 2 more years. I've got to spend money on 2 more books. Really frustrating. Sometimes it plays itself out in another way, like the King Killer Chronicles are the worst. Rothfuss has been tugging us along for 9 stinking years on this 3rd book in the trilogy, and I'm not sure it's ever going to come out. But I'm already invested. It's an amazing, amazing series, and I love it, and now I've got to finish it, but I'm just waiting, as are the rest of us. And often enough, to be honest, it's both of those issues. I'm looking at you, Wheel of Time, who drug us along for super, super long, or Song of Ice and Fire that still isn't finished and has changed the length like 4 times. Now we're waiting on 7 books? Get out of here. Third reason that I do not like series as much as I like standalone books is because it actually causes the writing style to be different than if it had been a standalone book. What I mean by that is, something that really bothers me is I've read a first book. I really enjoyed the first book. It's given me a great world building. Maybe there's a magic system involved and all these characters, and I've fallen in love with them, and that's great. And so I go, great, I'm going to go pick up the second book because I enjoyed it. Second book comes out, I read it, and they spend the first half of the second book recapping all the stuff that just happened in the first book. That's really frustrating because I don't need to see that information again. I just read the first book. I don't need you to talk about the characters again, and I don't need you to give me the world again and rebuild the magic system and everything else. The book has been written differently because it's part of a series. They assume that some people will pick up the second book and not bother with the first book, or they assume that you'll have forgotten what happened in the first book and you need a reminder in the second book. Either way, I've wasted a bunch of my time rereading the same information twice. Really good authors can do this creatively, but most of the time it just ends up being an information dump that happens in the second book that I don't care about. That is not a problem that you have with standalone books because they're literally standalone books. You get the information once. And that brings us to the question of why. Why would they do that? I think it's common knowledge, for instance, that Lord of the Rings, the trilogy, was originally designed to be sent out as one book. Of course, the reason that they don't do that is because money. And that's frustrating. I really hate that money is a main priority in storytelling, like that it affects storytelling so much. I would much prefer to read one book that cost me, $45 than have to read 3 books, each of which cost me $30. And of course, the publishing companies want the exact opposite. They want me to get really hooked on a book, and if they can stretch it out to 4 books or 5 books, great, that's even more money. Monetary interest being a primary reason that books are published in series instead of as standalone books is super frustrating. The last reason that standalone books are better than series in general is the barrier to entry. Right now on the New York Times bestseller list, there are 3 of the top 5 books that are part of series. And not only are they part of series, one of them is in its 25th book and the other one is in its 55th book. That's crazy sauce. As I said earlier, I'm a completionist, so I'm not fixing to jump in on the 55th book in a series. If I'm interested in that series at all, I'm going to start at book number 1. And the fact that I'm going to start at book number 1 and I know there's 55 books in that series, it makes me not want to start any of them. And more, a lot of the popular books that are coming out, I've noticed, tend to be later on in a series of books that I haven't yet started yet, because I'd rather wait for all the books to be out in a series before I jump into it. So I'm not waiting on some book that the author hasn't even written yet, or may never get around to writing. He may die in the process. Anyway, let me know in the comments, which one do you prefer? Would you rather pick up a standalone book, or do you really prefer series and trilogies and duologies and all the rest of them? Let me know in the comments which one's better. These are my 5 reasons why standalone books are better than book series. If you enjoyed this content, do feel free to like and subscribe, and as always, stay safe out there.